You're listening to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast from the Touchline. I'm Rev Brad, and during the month of May, we've been talking about mental health. Here in the United States, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and specifically on the podcast, we've been looking at how faith helps one's mental health, especially for those who are in professional sports, for those who are athletes. And today, part 2 of our interview with special guest Brooke Ewert. Brooke is the founder and director of the Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center. She and I have worked together for a number of years, and we've got a great relationship. She's a great friend. She's part of a referral network. So whenever we have athletes or coaches or others in the game of sport that need sports counseling, we refer on to her and her team. And there's others as well. So this interview has been broken up into 2 parts. If you didn't hear part 1 last week, you should go back, find it, listen to it. It's great. And this time we're going to get playing a game of Crosses with Rev towards the end of the interview, and it's a great time. So hold on. We get started right after this.
He's found the space, and he's found the back of the net.
Just a little off foot, thinking he's going to go far post. Not strong enough with his right hand.
Whips that one in. Far post, almost made him ends, and they have. He has the hat-trick. The second in his career, the third of the night, the hat-trick hero.
Talked about you're not going to be able to sustain that kind of pressure.
To the corner, goes towards the near post, and you're at the angle, and what a goal! What a goal!
Maybe here's into my next question. So, you've said the stigma for mental health is kind of dropping a bit. And we've seen some of the attention for mental health in sport kind of be a new rising subject. For soccer, I remember Landon Donovan brought some attention to it in 2017 as he talked about his own story and journey. And certainly, I think it was Michael Phelps later on that year. He shared his story, drew massive attention, the documentary that's out about him. Simone Biles, even the withdrawal from the Tokyo Olympics, really. And even still, I think you saw this tension because some people were kind of saying, what are you saying? Like, this is who you're supposed to be. Like, why are you taking away our country's chances at a medal? But we weren't thinking about the individual and some of the way that people were thinking and talking about that. So I'm just curious, Brooke, in your years going back maybe to that first class at Oregon State where it really grabbed your attention and knowing, this isn't really a big thing right now. Share with us, what is the progression or the growth around awareness and the addressing of mental health in sports? Where's that come to, and what's still left? What frontier lands still need to be kind of claimed in your mind?
Yeah, such a good question, because I think there's so many facets of this. Is again another podcast like I'm going to try to condense, but I think this is what's so interesting is that I think we've definitely had walls come down. I'm not sure 100% they're there yet. I think, what I'm seeing, and I think this is where the progression is to me, is like before it was like, don't talk about it, or your coach is gonna, sideline you. I think there's a lot more grace now. Like, hey, like, coach, I'm really struggling with my mental health, or there's something going on. I need to take a break. I think that conversation could happen now, whereas maybe before it would have been very frowned upon. Even just like thinking about professional athletes who now have been given funding to go seek mental health support that would have never been there before. I think frontiers, and this probably goes a little bit into PhD work too, is I feel like the gatekeepers are almost too locked in on their team. And I would love to see them like work a lot more with people within their community so athletes can get away from the team. And I think that's one of my biggest goals in awareness going forward is like, you have a lot of people who now sit in the city of Denver who are actually really good at their jobs that I would feel very comfortable sending any athlete to. And I feel like the gatekeepers, I see this at the Olympic level, I see this professional, I was like, oh, they can only go to the people who we refer them to, or they have to work for the team. And I'm like, sometimes I'm not necessarily sure that's to the full benefit of the athlete. I think it sounds good on paper, but I think, even having, like, we can even go to the Ted Lasso, like sports psychologist who's on staff. That's a tricky proposition, I think, because athletes are wondering, is this person going to go talk to my coach about what I'm seeing? And the fact that that's a thought is already concerning enough to me.
Sure.
But I think, like going back to Delaney's ballet company has a sports psychologist on staff. They meet with her regularly. That's something that's very like in the system. And I think it's very healthy if it's done that way. If it's just putting out fires all the time, I think that concerns me a little bit. And I think that's sometimes how it operates. I think, being embedded in a system has its benefits and its negative parts to it as well. And I think back to like one of my first professional athletes I ever saw said, "Are you going to talk to my coach about that?" And it always has sat in the back of my mind to separate a little bit and be maybe more of a consultant to the professional teams and helping them to buy into, you have someone in the community who they can go to that's really competent and who knows what they're talking about and how to deal with these issues. It doesn't always have to be in-house. I think that's kind of the barriers I'd like to see come down still a little bit more. And I think a lot of that has to do with trust. And I think maybe a little ignorance that there's some people out there that are actually really good at their jobs now and understand how to deal with this. And yeah, I think the training too piece, having these, I like with Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center, I've kind of asked everyone to specialize in something even very more specific than just sports counseling. Sports counseling is the broad term, right? But I'm
Sure.
like, hey, like if my thing is retirement and I love sitting in transition points or with injuries, that's kind of where I feel really comfortable now. And like, I'm just like all in with those athletes. And like Ariane, who works for me, all in on eating disorders. Doesn't mean she doesn't do others, and like, others on the team, like very much like, oh, coach focused or like dealing with coaching issues. And it helps us all to kind of narrow in. But that I think is like even the next thing is like, how specialized is everybody in their specific discipline, even within the discipline itself? And I think that's actually really exciting that this is coming. And even like I've had interns that are like, oh, I'm really interested in working with like F1. It's never crossed my mind once,
Yeah.
ever. But I'm like, the fact that you're interested in it, like go for it, because there's probably a need there that we just don't even know about yet. And I just talked to another intern last week and he's like, I'm super interested in depression and athletes. And I was like, great. Like, I think there's all these specialties coming within the specialty, which is really, really exciting to me.
You mentioned F1. I'm curious, what about esports? Because that's kind of growing in the first world. Is this the e-gamer, the gamer, the e-sport person? Is there mental health resources for them?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've definitely had esports and it makes me really, I have so many questions like in my head constantly, like, is this like program going against the way that they think it should be playing? And it like kind of like logically and like rationally, my brain really struggles with a lot of the questions that they're asking about like how they're interacting. But I think again, it always comes back to the performance piece to me is not the issue. It's like, is there a ton of anxiety sitting behind this? Why are they angry? Why are they getting frustrated with this game, or their sport? I think it's just so many backstories sometimes of like, how do you, I think anger to me seems like always the one with esports. And so that's like why I'm bringing that up. I
Mm.
just see like frustrations and anger and like, or working with their team, and who's their teammate and how good is their teammate. And so I think there's just all these different factors and it's so interesting. I was just on a plane with a ton of kiddos coming back from an esport competition. And I was like, I just saw all their esport, jackets. And I was like, so interesting. Like, this is literally a team now. And it's just like really
Yeah.
grown too. Like where it wasn't even on my radar. And now it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Brooke, you mentioned earlier some top mental health issues that you're seeing, but could you drill it down, give us your top three mental health issues affecting athletes at maybe all levels this day? What would those top three be? And then what would you say are the top or most effective counseling tools that you're seeing to address those issues? And some of those may be generationally kind of driven, but what are some of the things you're seeing most effective?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about it, it kind of always comes down to like the three that are all connected in some way, shape, or form, which is anxiety, depression, and panic disorder, meaning panic attacks. And I think like I mentioned earlier, it's really cognitive behavioral therapy that shifts it for me. And I think sometimes meds, like just to even throw that out there, it's not something that's ever off the table for us either. Is like maybe they need a break. Maybe they need to like let their brain, unwind a little bit even on meds. So I always like put that out there too. It doesn't always necessarily mean therapy. It sometimes is therapy and meds as well. But anxiety for sure. And so much cognitive distortions, which is connected to anxiety. Just like negative thinking patterns, like I should be doing this, everything's black and white, I'm catastrophizing everything. If this thing doesn't go right, then all these things are, my whole life is going to explode. It's like always constantly reeling people back and being like, that's not true. That's just what the negative brain is telling you right now. Like, and then, mood, like depression for sure. Like I just had a client the other day, like, I'm just really struggling today. Like, I don't even want to get out of bed. And it's like the things they need to do or like the things they don't want to do. So for example, it's like, probably should go walk your dog right now, get outside, get some fresh air, do some deep breathing techniques, giving yourself like just kind of a reset. And even with panic stuff, kind of figuring out what's going on, like why is there so much anxiety behind the panic attacks, kind of slowing those things down as well. And sometimes it's like therapy works great, like I said, and sometimes I have to add, like we've got to add something else into it from a medication standpoint. But it feels like once there's clear thinking, to me, there's always this like sigh of relief, like, oh, like I'm thinking differently about this now. And I think I could titrate off and feel like I have more tools behind it. So much about breathing meditation. I would say for all of these, like I honestly, this is kind of just like where I feel like my tool belt goes, but it's like looking through those cognitive distortions, which ones are kind of holding them back, framing things in their own minds, or if they say something that's not true in the office, I'll be like, wait a second, like, let's go back, let's reframe. Like, how can you think about that differently? So really trying to, like I always say, like, I'm always just trying to slow things down because I feel like once things are a little bit slower and clear, then they tend to start picking up these tools and skills as well. And the ultimate goal is like they shouldn't be in therapy, right? Like cognitive behavioral therapy is probably 10 to 15 sessions. That's not the reality for all athletes. Like sometimes they're there for longevity, through sport and career as like these things flare up, but you don't want them there consistently. I would say past 15, around 15 sessions, I would want them, every other week or every other month, at some point, like being able to do these skills on their own and having the wherewithal to know, like, how am I gonna get through this situation? Brooke has taught me like journaling is like a really good way to
Yeah.
like get my fears out on paper or, to talk. And another thing too, this is probably something that maybe differentiates me from a lot of counselors is I really honestly treat my job as a 24/7 job. Now, boundaries wise, that's not healthy, but I have athletes competing all over the place all the time. And so I always want them to know my phone is always open to you if you need to call. And so part of this is like a new technique that they're really seeing, which is talk therapy through text, talk therapy through a quick phone call, calming the athlete down, getting them to a place where they're like, you know what, I've got this. It's like you're just kind of slowing them down even on competition day or game day. And just that thought that I could say something to Brooke through text and she's going to be able to like receive that and like respond, I think is a huge gift to them too.
Wow. We're going to take a short break to hear more about the Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center, and we'll be right back.
Hello, this is Brooke Ewert, founder and director of the Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center. Athletes at all levels struggle with different mental health issues at different times in their sports journeys and careers. Myself and my team of licensed professional counselors at Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center stand ready to offer you and your family the help and support that you need. Our team is available for on-site and remote counseling support. Learn more by visiting our website at RockyMountainSportsCounselingCenter.com. You can email or call me or a member of our counseling team. Reach out to us today to get started on a pathway toward recovering and growing your mental health strength and resiliency. Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center, supporting athletes as they work through mental health crisis, injury, and retirement.
So, Brooke, right before we went to the break, you were talking about talk therapy, text therapy. I saw in the pandemic having a massive impact on global mental health issues. And in my humble opinion, one of the best outcomes and adaptations was some changes to the professional mental health offerings in that it used to be you had to be in person, and really there's untold value to that. But because of COVID, mental health had to become telehealth. So maybe share with us, give us an update. What's the state of telehealth? Good changes, bad? Like, do you see these things staying, or do you see it changing, or is telehealth going to be around with us? Is it having a good, effective impact? You kind of mentioned it seems like there's some good outcomes coming.
Yeah. I actually, before COVID, if you had asked me that question, I'd been like, absolutely not. I'm never doing that. And now it's half of my clientele are on Zoom. So that's the shift that it's really gone to for me. And it's opened some doors just, like I said, with traveling athletes and the transient nature of athletes, being able to touch back. And this is kind of where that coaching role comes in a little bit for me, is I have to switch roles a little bit when they're on the road. The cool and amazing thing is there is a huge thing that could possibly be coming, I think, within the next year. I think there's like 33 states that have signed on to the Compact Initiative. I think that's what it's called. And it's supposed to be done this year, but it will allow counselors to seek athletes or any client that they have across state boundaries. We are so bound in by what the state says we can do right now.
Mm.
And so there are two groups, and in my opinion, athletes are one, and I would say military people are the second, that are very transient in nature. And it's really unfortunate that they would have to switch counselors to a different state, or that I would have to look for somebody for them instead of just having consistent therapy. And so, if an athlete gets traded, I've got to figure out, okay, like what are we going to do with this client if they really need extra support? So there are some really good things coming down the pipe. I think it just depends on how long this takes for it to fully be in effect. But that means you'll have to get your license in the state that you're seeing an athlete. And I've been working on that this year. I already have 2 states that I'm working on for Florida and Arkansas, because those tend to be places that I've been doing supervision in Arkansas under supervision, but Florida, we get a lot of phone calls from too. And I would really, really, really like to broaden our footprint in the US to not just Colorado.
Yeah. So what does that mean for Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center? Are you guys just in the Rocky Mountains, or does that mean you guys can expand out a bit?
I think what we're going to do is end up starting to put offices wherever we can, and they'll still have the same name. It'll be weird to have Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center in Florida, but I think maybe that'll even be like enough of a namesake that people will be like, oh, it's already been established, and like we know what that is in Colorado. And hopefully just kind of start dotting a lot of places in the US to have some really good sports counseling centers that know how to deal with athletes and like just all the things that come with being an athlete, and just finding and like really helping them to find us too. I think there's some good things coming, and I think athletes, like I said, are starting to advocate more for themselves. And that's what I'm really hoping that this will actually do. Like if our footprint does enlarge, we'll have more centers available for people in other states so that it's not just here.
Nice. Nice. Well, Brooke, you have this extensive background in counseling, going way back to Oregon State days, and now you're in a PhD program. Someone who's interested in sport counseling, and sort of this progression using psychology or these other things, what are some of the resources? What are some of the ways you would coach or advise or counsel someone who's just kind of beginning in this journey as they look to enter into the helping profession of counseling, and especially specifically into the arena or world of sport?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Brad. This year, I think I've had like probably 10 high school and college students call and ask this question. So it's something that I get asked quite often. And the best way I always tell people is, if this is something you're interested in, there's something that's like you have a passion point for athletes, and this feels like a really good career, there's like the doors are wide open. We are just at the beginning. And like to look at why you're interested, like as a helping profession. There's a lot of obviously time and energy that goes into it. But the first pathway I honestly think is getting like a really good psych degree at an undergrad level. And then, going to grad school, I went the mental health route. Some sports psychologists, sports psychologists go the sports psychology route. If you're like interested in working for college or a professional team and having that title, but also like, the team dynamic and the performance piece, that's probably the pathway for you. Mental health for me was the path because I really wanted to be in the therapy room with athletes working through, like I mentioned, anxiety, depression, and panic disorders. And then from there, I don't know if you need more schooling unless you really want to work with maybe the more elite professional level. It's interesting, my PhD, like I'm kind of like every time I'm like, well, what is that going to actually do for me? Like the longer I've got into it, because I'm like, I feel like I've broken through barriers already. But I think part of it is right now, like I was talking about, the gatekeepers really want those two letters in front of your name. And I'm not necessarily sure that's 100% necessary if the person has proven true to who they are as a counselor. Part of my like advocacy is I think there are a lot of people that aren't going to have those two letters in front of their name. And I think there's some really good counselors out there that are working with athletes who I see. And I'm just like, well, they're not going to like, so why shouldn't they be at the table? And it's a little, I think a little bit of, there's like one barrier that needs to still be broached, and that it's that sports counselors should be at the table as well. And I really, really, really want to advocate for those who don't want to get those extra letters on the front of their name, that if they're really talented, they should be in the conversation of someone that can help athletes. I think it's a very unique population. I think you need to have, like I said, pretty healthy boundaries, but I think also like you're working with some pretty amazingly gifted people and you need to know the nuances of it. They're so fun. Like I honestly like think every week I'm like, I'm so like incredibly blessed and lucky that I get to do this job. Like I was telling someone, I'm like, every day is so different. And every day is like a different set of skill sets that come into. So it's like, I could have a professional athlete and the next person's a high school athlete. And then the next person is a college athlete, and they're all different sports. And so my brain is constantly having to click over into different sports. And I think even that, like if you have a specific, going back to the pathway, if you have a specific sport you really want to work with, or you want to work with coaches, like there's so many pathways available now. And I think it's just like, it's grittiness to get through it, but you can do it. You just have to figure out how to get there and build a ton of relationships very early on in your career.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, Brooke, thanks so much. As we're gonna transition now into a little game I like to have guests on the pod play. And Brooke, you've gotten to know a little bit of soccer, so there's going to be some questions. The game is called Crosses with Rev, and there's going to be a mix. So it's an either or kind of, and the goal, it's 1 minute, and you try and get through as many questions as you can. So either or questions are worth 1 point. There's going to be some fill in the blank questions that are worth 3. And so your goal is just to answer as many as you can in a minute. And some of these will be a mix of soccer and sport, some, just gut reaction. And if there's a question that's too difficult for you or feel like, oh, that's controversial, I can't put that out there, just say pass and we'll move to the next question quickly. But it's designed to kind of, get your mind moving and going here and there. You'll have 60 seconds. So after I ask the first question, I'll start the timer. If I've asked a question and the timer's, still going, or you still have a little bit on there, you'll get a chance to answer it. So it kind of works that way. Now, people are critical. They're like, Brad, you take too long to ask these questions, but I try to say them really fast. And, if you'll say just a response really fast, we'll keep going. Does that sound good?
That's great.
You ready for this?
Ready. I
Okay.
hope.
I've got the timer. I'm gonna start the timer right after this first question, and we'll get through this. You'll do great. You'll do great. So far the leader has like 26 points. So it's a good mix, and I think you'll do great with it. Okay, are you ready? Do you need a warm up question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Left footed or right footed?
Right footed.
My favorite EPL team is?
Ooh, Chelsea?
Dribble or pass?
Pass.
California or Colorado?
California.
Baylor University or Oregon State University?
Ooh, Baylor.
The Ballet or the Beautiful Game?
The Beautiful Game.
New England Patriots or Denver Broncos?
New England Patriots.
Surf or ski?
Surf.
My favorite post-game meal is
Spaghetti.
Eric Erickson or Carl Rogers?
Carl Rogers.
Masters or PhD?
Masters.
Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
Psychology or counseling?
Counseling.
Myers-Briggs or Enneagram?
Enneagram.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
My favorite comedian is?
Brian Regan.
Oh, that's it. That's it. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I think you got up through 22, 23 points.
Nice.
So you'll be on the leaderboard.
Yeah, I'm up there.
Yeah, I had a few others I was going to ask you. East Coast or West Coast?
West Coast.
Yeah, I'm a West Coast person myself. England or Italy?
England for sure. It's my favorite place on earth minus America. Love England.
You have been to Italy, right?
That we're going this summer, actually.
Going this summer. Oh, well.
It'll change.
It could change, right? The other one I was going to ask you was APA or ACA?
Oh, ACA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, that was a fun game.
Yeah. It's just
Funny too. I don't even know. So I really, honestly, my favorite EPL team is Leeds, but they're not up there right now. So then I had to switch quickly to one of our kids' teams.
Oh, well, I mean, you could have answered Leeds. We would have taken that because they were in the Prem not too long ago. I should change that question to my favorite English team is.
Yeah.
But you had a fun story. What was the team that you guys kind of latched onto at first, but then the kids were like, "Oh, I don't know if I like this team."
That's funny. Yeah. So I think when we first went to England, our first time, our boys all got shirts for West Ham, and we didn't know anything about Premier League. That was like 6 or 7 years ago, which is crazy. And then so interesting. Like, even when I worked for you, I really, truly did not know anything about soccer. Like, coming in, like, I remember sitting with Callahan and like she would explain things so well to me. And I was just like so grateful for her that she would let me ask what I called probably not very smart questions. But then just so patient. And then I just started watching the game more, and like COVID for sure increased our watching. Like, we just started watching even more. But then like now, like, we're going to English Premier games, like,
Yeah.
but it's so fun. Our house is like a hotbed of rivalries, and we've got Man City, we've got Tottenham, we've got Chelsea, and then Leeds when it was there. And it was Saturdays and Sundays are so fun in our house. Like, our neighbors are always like, "What are you guys screaming about? It's 7 in the morning." And we're like, watching football, watching English football. Come on.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. Say more though. You picked Enneagram over the Myers-Briggs. That kind of surprises me. Yeah.
I use the Enneagram in sessions all the time. Like, what's your number? Talk about those weaknesses, talk about the strengths. I don't let my clients say, "Oh, because I'm an 8, this is why." Like, I really just want to see, like, what are those strengths. I have Enneagram books in my office. I'm constantly asking those questions around, why do you think that's your number? What are the things that lead you to think that's your number, even though the test like maybe gives it to, can you see other wings that, maybe come alongside? I think it's such a fascinating, like testing a test. And then I would say a majority of my clients have had to take it because I'm just curious. Like, I want to know kind of where you sit. So many ones.
Yeah. Oh, for
a
sure.
lot of 9s, a lot of 1s and 9s and that, but so interesting just to see their processes as they think through it, and like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot more sense of why this is a weakness for me or why this is a strength.
Yeah. And the times when I've done the Enneagram with athletes, I've seen 1s and 3s, actually 3s being another high sample size for some of the teams and players, as that achievement aspect, just like reaching for and not being satisfied until they've hit a certain level has been another key. So I've appreciated the Enneagram as well. Yeah, that was really good. Brooke, I wonder if is there anything else that you might want to just say as we kind of wrap down the interview? Maybe it's to an athlete, a parent, or family member. It relates to mental health. Anything like are we still kind of in this mode of saying, hey, just watch out for these stigmas that exist? Like, or are we in a new day when we're saying something different? Like, what would you want to say to someone as we close out the interview?
Yeah, I think the thing I always try to emphasize is never wait too long. And I think sometimes we think we're going to make it, I'm going to push through this. I'm going to power through this. Oh, my mood's only been down for 2 weeks. Like, I'm going to power through it. And it's like, sometimes just letting someone in and like a professional in is such a bonus. And it's interesting. I just read a book by a sports psychologist in England, and he said athletes at the top almost should always have someone alongside of them at this point. Like, you are experiencing things that are such a challenge that the general population doesn't like even experience daily. And just to have someone in your back pocket, they could be like, hey, I'm really struggling. And I think that's the thing that I like, even going back to the stigma and things that we still are on the frontier. I think that's going to become like a huge part of this, like every elite athlete, maybe even college, dipping into college now, of like, I just need someone who I can talk to when I'm not having the best day, or I need to process through something. And then also just like being very open to like, yeah, like there's nothing wrong with going to see someone for help. I don't think, like, in my opinion, I just think it makes you a stronger athlete. Like, just to process, to have someone that's like, oh, I've seen this, I've heard this before. You're not alone. And I think destroying the narrative that they have that they're the only one, I think is such an interesting narrative, that I'm the only one and my entire team that's experiencing anxiety. And I could literally promise you everyone is, it's just at different levels. And so I think part of it is that it's like the advocacy for me is such a big piece of this. And all those who surround athletes need to know this. Like, if you see something that's off, say something. If you feel like the athlete has like been down for a while, find someone that can help them. And just all these avenues that are out there for athletes now, there's a ton of resources, and I think utilizing them, you know, to the best of your ability. But like, just like I said, having someone that you could speak with that's like, I've been there, I've heard this before, or you are not alone, I think is such a powerful message to athletes that they can navigate through mental health.
Well, thanks, Brooke. Thanks for being on the podcast today. It's been a joy and a privilege. If you're an athlete, if you're a family member, or you're a coach, or you're with a team, check out the Rocky Mountain Sports Counseling Center. Check out Brooke and her team. Maybe they can help you with where you're at, with your sport, with the things that you're facing. And Brooke, thanks for being part of this during our Mental Health Awareness Month of May. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this has been counselor, almost doctor, Brooke Ewert and Rev Brad, coming to you from the Touchline.